Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Landis from NGDU, and we are thrilled to have Jesse Schell here to give a talk today. I've been following his work for a long time, from the Dice Talk to the Game Apocalypse to the Games for Change talk he's given. And one of the things I really like about his work is that it straddles the commercial world and trying to make the world a better place. What he might not know is how many different people he inspires outside of game design. I've got colleagues, Roz De La Torre, who uses your work in brainstorming around everything from UX to educational problems. And then a team that I work with in terms of game-based motivation and learning that we're definitely inspired by your work. So we're very happy to have you here. Thank you very much. Please welcome Jesse Schell to Google.
Hey everybody, good to be here, right? So yeah, I do a few different things. I run a company called Schell Games on the south side of Pittsburgh there. We got about 65 people doing all kinds of different game projects there. I also teach at the Carnegie Mellon Entertainment Technology Center. I used to be the creative director of Disney Imagineering Virtual Reality Studio, and I wrote a book called The Art of Game Design. I'm curious, that DICE 2010 talk that I gave, how many people here have seen that? A few people? Some people? Okay, cool. I'm just wondering what should be recap and what shouldn't. So I'll just jump right in. So yeah, I think part of the reason I'm probably asked to come by today was a lot of the interest that was generated from that talk. That was a very unusual talk for me because, I give talks about things all the time, and that one actually suddenly, I figured it was just another talk, and the next thing I know, there's, 200,000 views on YouTube or something like that. Because I'm a college professor, I'm not at all used to having people listen to what I say. And what I was talking about there was how things were really changing in the game industry. And one of the big changes that we've been seeing is game industry traditionally is a very fantasy-oriented place. It's about, we put a little fantasy on the screen and you have a controller and you move through that fantasy and that's what it's about. But when we look at the trends that have been happening in the game industry in the past few years, they're not fantasy-based. They're much more reality-based. We have Facebook games that are all about connecting with your real friends. We have things like the Kinect and the Wii Fit that are all about using your real body motion. We've got things that involve real objects like Guitar Hero and Webkins and things like that. And I started thinking more and more about some of the trends and trajectories that are happening in that way, and combining that with the notion of Moore's Law and other technological rapidity that's happening, we're getting to an age of disposable technology, where very soon we're going to be at the point where every piece of product packaging is able to have a CPU in it, potentially have a screen in it, potentially have microphones, cameras, internet connection. And I started thinking about, well, what is it like? What is a world like when you start to have all of those things there, and then we start to be able to do different things with human motivation using those things? And I painted a little picture that I think people found at least provoking, right? The idea being, you'd wake up in the morning and you go to brush your teeth, and hey, good job, 10 points for brushing your teeth because you got a Wi-Fi connected toothbrush, right? And then more than that, you've brushed your teeth 5 times this week, so you're going to get special bonus points for that. And then further, you brush your teeth for the full requisite 3 minutes because the toothbrush has a timer, and so you get points for all those things. Now, who would want to give you points? Who could possibly care? The folks who make the toothpaste, because if you brush your teeth on a regular basis 3 times a day, they're going to sell 3 times as much toothpaste than if you just do it once a day. So they're going to come up with systems to reward you, to give you coupons so you can get your toothpaste cheaper. So then you go to breakfast and you get your cornflakes, and in the old days you used to read the back of the box while you ate your cornflakes. Well, now things are different. There's a tilt sensor when you tip it out to pour the bowl, so you get points for doing that. And now you play the video game that's on the back of the box. And of course, the video game is connected to Facebook, so you can see which of your friends are also playing the game. And hey, good job. Of all your friends who eat cornflakes and play the cornflakes game, you got the high score. So, good job for you. So then you're going to go to work and you get on the bus. The bus, I don't want to get on the bus. But of course you're going to get on the bus because the government is giving you all kinds of points, for using public transportation that you can apply for tax credit, right? And so, you're sitting there on the bus and you're like, well, I guess I'm going to play a game. And you could spend 99 cents for Tetris, on your phone. But it turns out there's Coke-tress, and it's free. So you're playing that, little Coke bottles are stacking up, and that's fine. And then that suddenly reminds you, like, hey, I had that crazy dream last night where my mother was dancing with a Pepsi bottle. And then you realize, oh, of course, it was the REM-tertainment system. And the REM-tertainment system is simple. It's a little thing that goes in your ear, and it can detect when you've entered REM sleep, and then it starts to put advertising messages into your dreams. And if you recall them in the morning, and you can kind of correctly identify the products that were being put into your dreams, you get all kinds of big bonus points, which you can apply towards all kinds of purchases. So you get to work, on time, good job, and you've been there, on time every day that week, it's Friday, good job for you. And you go and you see there's your office mate. He's right there, and he says, hey, check it out, man. I got one of those no e-ink tattoos. I can change it to be whatever I want. But of course, right now, he's got it set to, what are you guys calling it? Tattoogle AdSense, right? You're getting it set up for that so that it kind of rotates through different ads. And you tell him, dude, you're so stupid. Why did you put that so high in your arm? You should have put it down low on your arm like me, because everyone knows that Tattoogle AdSense has light sensors in it. And it's only going to give you points if the light sensors are touching it, because we want to know when people are seeing the ads. And just then you notice that your ad and his ad are both Pop-Tarts ads, and you know how this game works, so you say, link sync, and he says Pop-Tarts, and then you do a high five, and the body electricity sensors sense that you did a high five, and so you get points and points and points, right? And what the heck is the point of that? Well, the point is, you want something that's going to draw attention to the ads. And so there are going to be these game systems that get you to pay attention to the ads. Well, okay, so then you're going to lunch, and you've had Dr. Peppers all that week, so points, 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 points. And of course, you're going to have a fifth one, because Dr. Pepper has a special this week, 5 Dr. Peppers in a week, and you get big bonus points, so you do that. Then after lunch, you got a meeting, and the meeting's at this other building, and it's about a half-mile away, and you could take a shuttle over there, catch a ride with somebody, but you're thinking, you know what, I'm going to walk, because you're using those Nike Plus shoes, and the Nike Plus shoes are connected up with your health insurance company, and you get points that apply to a discount on your health insurance if you walk more than a mile a day. And further, there's a heart rate detector, and if you get your heart rate up above a certain level for a certain part of the day, you get special bonus points for that, which is going to help with your health insurance. So of course, you're going to walk over there. Then on your way home, you're going to do some shopping. You're going to go to the grocery store. And oh man, the grocery store is this crazy points festival that's a huge headache to have to navigate. So of course, you're going to pull out a phone. You guys probably wouldn't pull out this phone, but you'd pull out some phone. And the phone's just you're going to tell it what groceries you want, and it's going to do all the calculation, and then bam. You're going to get all kinds of points for picking the right groceries that are going to get the best deals. And then you get home, and your daughter says, hey, I got my report card. I got all A's. And you're like, all A's? That's awesome. Because you're going to get a whole bunch of points that you're going to be able to apply towards a scholarship. And I'm going to get the Barack Obama Good Parenting bonus, which is going to apply to taxes. So thank you very much. Wait a second, though. Did you practice your piano today? And she says, well, yes, of course I practiced my piano. You say, well, what score did you get? And she said, well, I got 85,000. 85,000? You've never done so well in that sonata. You're going to get 9,000 points from the Arts Council, which has the potential to go towards an arts scholarship. So go you. Okay, so after dinner, you're going to watch a little TV, right? Maybe take a rest from all this. But of course, TV is a little different now than it used to be. We all remember the good old days. Remember the good old days when there were ads on TV and you'd skip them? Remember that? Remember how crazy that was? Now nobody skips the ads, of course, because every ad is an opportunity to kind of get more points and things. Because ever since Microsoft kind of put the Kinect in the living room, which is a camera that watches you all the time. And then they got the Kinect 2.0 that can actually effectively do gaze tracking at a distance, so they can tell exactly where on the screen your eyes are looking at any given moment. Every ad became a game where you try and follow the logo around and all kinds of things. And you get all kinds of points and points and points and points. And remote controls, of course, now have a little screen on them. And of course, they're internet connected. You can see your Facebook friends exactly what they're all watching on TV at this given moment. And you can have a little video chat with them while you watch the same shows. And you play multiplayer games together. And you're all getting points and points and points. It'd be a very, very natural way to watch television. So finally you're going to bed, right? You're going to read something, just read and go to bed. And of course you've got, the new Kindle 4.0, and it too has the gaze tracker in it. Why do you need the gaze tracker? Partly you want it because it's handy. It knows that if you stare at a word for more than 3 seconds, you don't know the meaning, and it pops up a definition, so that's kind of handy. But also, Amazon's got that whole thing where it gives book reviews, and people put book reviews in, but how do they know who's read the book? Well, now they know. They know exactly how much time you spent reading this book. And the more time you spent paying attention to the book, or maybe you've reread the book, the more value your review has online. And you finish reading this novel, and guess what? Achievement unlocked. Microsoft bought Amazon. I don't know if you heard that. It's one of you guys is going to buy them, I figure. Anyway, achievement unlocked 500 novels, and you're feeling, wow, that's awesome. I finally read 500 novels. It took me 20 years, but I did it. I read 500 novels, and you feel proud, but then you feel a little embarrassed because you realize, man, my 500th novel was this kind of crummy Star Trek novel. And everybody's going to know that because this information is permanent. None of this information ever goes away, right? I mean, it used to be, your grandparents, what books did they read? And when did they read them? And what foods did they eat? And where did they go? And you don't know any of that. But your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, they're going to know all of that. It's all going to be permanent data. And so the big question that I think we face with all this is this question of, is this all just going to be a bunch of gross, commercialistic, kind of, I don't know, sort of this disgusting mess? Or is the fact that all this is going to be monitored going to inspire us to maybe be better people? Anyway, so that was kind of the little ending piece of that dice talk that I gave that had it kind of got people talking and thinking a bit. And after I gave that, I was really surprised at how interested people were to kind of talk about this, and everyone sort of assumed I knew what I was talking about, and that I had some level of expertise in any of this, which I did not. And so I thought, geez, I better figure something out. So I've spent the last year and a half trying to understand some of these questions about where is this stuff going. So I wanted to share a little of that with you today. So one of the things people took away from that talk is that, oh, we should get badges on everything. That, people like games. Games give little rewards and badges and things. If we just stick those on everything, it's going to be great. It's just going to make absolutely everything better. And no, that's not at all. That's not at all right. That's sort of like if I'd been like, hey, have you heard about this thing, chocolate? It's pretty good. People are like, oh, wow, you're right. This chocolate is good. We should put it on everything. Why don't we just put it on everything? Yeah, we'll call it chalkification. Yeah, we need to get some chalkification going on. And I'd be like, no, wait, stop. Please, give us a moment. And the guy would say, no, you don't know. I mean, think about it. Like, if you take chocolate and you put it on ice cream, it's better, right? I'm like, well, yeah, okay, sure, it's better. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that because I own the world's largest cottage cheese company. We are going to chalkify our product and triple our sales. So we want your help to chalkify this. And no, that's not right. Now, why that's not right is a little hard to think about. It's a little hard to put your finger on. If I asked you to draw a picture of why chocolate on cottage cheese is a bad idea, it's just gross. And I just know from experience that kind of thing is gross. But if you had to kind of present me like a logical argument, it would be a little harder because we don't really understand the exact chemical mechanics of what's going on there. And we have some of the same challenges trying to figure this out with games because, man, there's a lot of products that's just like, no, chocolate is just not going to help you. It's not going to help you sell more products, right? And the other thing about games is, like, it's not like making games is easy. It's not like you just put it out there and it just works and everybody loves it. There's plenty of bad games that everybody hates because there's subtlety and difficulty in creating these sort of game structures that people actually like. The thing everybody wants is this, right? Turn the everyday things you do into the dreamiest perks and rewards with the Disney Rewards Visa card. That's what everybody wants to do. We'll just take what we've got and just add little rewards to it, and it makes it better because pleasure is always additive, right? If you just add more on top, it gets better. But that's not true. Just like the chocolate and the cottage cheese, sometimes they combine in ways that's undesirable. And rewards can backfire on you. This is a counterintuitive thing. This isn't something that people intuitively grasp, but it's very much true, and there are 30 or 40 years of psychological research that show that in many cases the concept of giving people rewards to do something in order to kind of get them into the habit of doing it is often going to backfire. If you're interested in this, there's this great book, Punished by Rewards, by Alfie Kohn, where he does a great summary of the psychological research. You know, his subtitle I love, The Trouble with Gold Stars, Incentive Plans, A's, Praise, and Other Bribes, because fundamentally what they found is anything where you bribe people to do something in order to get a reward ends up not giving you the results that you want. It ends up making people want to do that activity less, not more. So one of the first studies was all about children drawing pictures. The children like drawing pictures. You give them crayons, they'll draw pictures. Here's a question: what if you pay them to draw pictures? What happens then? Well, kids like getting paid, so paid plus drawing pictures must be just better. Well, it's not really better. What happens is, it's true that children draw more pictures, but the pictures definitely appear to go down in aesthetic quality, right? So you get more pictures that are bad. If that's what you want, then maybe you're okay. Maybe that's good for you. But the really interesting part of the study is when they stop paying. And if they have two control groups, one where they don't pay them and one where they do, the group that they didn't pay them, they have them draw pictures, and afterwards they still like drawing pictures. The group where you pay them and then you take the money away, they now become very disinterested in drawing pictures. The idea that when you give someone rewards and prizes for doing something, it sends a message that says, this thing isn't worth doing unless you have this other system in place, which is often the exact opposite of what people are trying to intend when they start giving you incentives and rewards in order to get you to start doing something. So there's a lot you have to be careful about there. And so then you have a question, well wait a minute, what am I going to do? I love this little video clip here from School of Rock. See if we get audio. Oh, our audio is not too good. You have a magic knob or something? No magic. Oh, maybe my master volume here.
How many black dots here?
Demerits.
What kind of a sick school is this? As long as I'm here, there will be no grades or gold stars or demerits.
Right, so if you don't have all those things, you know, what are you going to do? Right? If you're like, hey, I want this kind of gamification thing going on, but you don't have badges, you don't have gold stars, you don't have demerits, what should you be doing? And is there an approach that makes any sense here? And there's a great answer to be found, and if you find this book, Glued to Games, by Scott Rigby and Richard Ryan, this is kind of a summary of this thing called self-determination theory. And they took it and applied self-determination theory, which is, I think, one of the most important revolutions in human psychology, probably in the last 50 years, and they applied it to games. And I'll talk through this a little bit because self-determination theory isn't very well known. One of the things people assume that games are all about fun, right? If it's fun, it's good, and if it's not fun, it's not good. And it's true that fun is an important part of games, but it's not the only part of games, and it's not even the central part of games, which is kind of surprising. And that's one of the things that came out in some of Scott Rigby's research, was that the things that keep people coming back for games and predict long-lasting value in games aren't fun, but are these other properties that happen to be the central aspects of self-determination theory. So let's just talk through those real quick, because it's pretty simple. The idea of self-determination theory is that we have our physical needs, you know, that we all know about. You know, you got to eat, you got to sleep, and you got to breathe, and all those things. But we also have psychological needs. And self-determination theory posits that there are precisely 3 psychological needs. And that if you don't have these, you go kind of batshit crazy, right? So these are these. The first one being competence. You have to feel like you're good at something. If you don't feel like you're good at something in your life, you become mentally unhealthy. Second one is autonomy. You want some freedom in what you do. And then the third one is relatedness, connecting to other people. And if you have all three of these things, you have a good shot at being mentally healthy. Now the thing that's interesting to think about is these three things are things that games are really good at. Games are really good at making you feel competent, having you find your right skill level and making you feel good at what you do. You have freedom to play a game how you want to play it. And in fact, a game compared to, say, work, you can stop whenever you want and just walk away. You have this huge level of freedom in games. And most games are multiplayer games. In the grand history of games, the majority of them are about connecting with other people. So games have an awful lot of those things. So those are three definite things to look at when you're thinking about this. And some people say, well, now wait a minute. I mean, do we really have to get into all the psychology stuff? Games are just software systems. We make lots of software systems. Games are a software system. We'll make some of those. It's just another system. Who cares? And you could look at it that way, but there's some flaws with that approach. I love this example of the big red button, right? Say, I told you, guess what? I've got this new tax software, just came out. It's really cool. All you do is you get this big red button and you push it, you push it and boom, your taxes are done. They're completely done. They're done, and we have verifiable proof that they're done the best that could ever be done in the whole world. You'd probably think that's probably a pretty good piece of tax software. Right? Google might be sniffing around that maybe we should acquire that company, right? But if I told you that, hey, big red button software, we have a new product. Everyone liked our tax thing so much, we decided we'd go into games. We have a new game. It's called Angry Birds. And here's how it works. You press the big red button, you win. And you'd say, that's the worst game I ever played. It's terrible. Right? So clearly there's something very different between these two types of applications. There's something really, really different. And you could say, well, it's okay, I guess it has to do with the type of software, but it has nothing to do with the software or the system. It has everything to do with the person who uses it. I have a friend who loves doing taxes. He really gets into it. New tax codes come out. He wants to read them all. He's all excited about it. When he does his taxes, he does them 6 or 7 different ways. What if I do them this way? Kind of optimizing for long term, and this way for short term. And he goes on and on and on, does them all, and he thinks it's great. He loves it. He does his friends' taxes, right? But he hates video games. If I made him play Angry Birds for an hour, he would just, whatever, all right, I'll sit through it, right? So the difference here is the difference between taxes for most people are a have to thing. Angry Birds for most people is a wanna thing. But that has nothing to do with the thing. It has everything to do with the person who's doing it and what they have to do versus what they want to do. So this is a very important idea, this have to versus wanna. And in terms of when people talk about, oh, I want to gamify something, it's like, I think what you mean is you want to move it from the have to column into the wanna column. So then how do you do that? So to examine this a little further, things that are have to, those are things that are duty. I'm doing it because I have to. Wanna things tend to be fun. Work tends to be on the have to side. Play tends to be on the wanna side. Slavery, yeah, that's probably on the have to side in most cases. And freedom, that fits the wanna side, which connects back to our self-determination theory there. Efficiency, this is an important one, is on the have to side. And that was one of the big revolutions, right? The Industrial Revolution was all about going from a survival economy to an efficiency economy. And how do we make things more efficient so we can do them better? But the thing to think about efficiency is you only care about it when it's have to things. Nobody comes and says, hey, remember I told you I was going to take a 2-week vacation? I figured out how to get it down to 6 days. Right? Yeah. No, that's terrible. That's not what you want at all, because efficiency is not what you're seeking in a wanna situation. You're optimizing for pleasure. You want to figure out how can I get the most pleasure into my vacation, not the smallest amount of time. Well, that's something. But one of the big realizations I had recently about the nature of have to and wanna is things you have to do are things where you are avoiding a negative consequence. You're avoiding pain and suffering. Things you want to do, your mind is seeking positive consequence. and talk to neuroscientist people, those are different parts of the brain. And I think that's why this feels like such a big flip of a switch when it happens. My friend who loves doing taxes, he's seeking positive consequences. He's looking for that moment when everything lines up perfectly and he's got the little optimized number and it just feels so good to see all that. Whereas me, I'm trying to stay out of jail. That's the consequence I'm avoiding. Now, games fit into this because, well, first of all, they're interactive, and systems are interactive. But the thing about games is they're designed entirely for pleasure. They don't have any other purpose. If they're not pleasurable, they don't have any point, really. And so more and more people have started to turn towards game designers as they've been realizing, hey, I want to figure out how to put more pleasure into my system. I want to make my thing more of a wanna system. And hey, you game people, that's all you do. And games have a lot of things that people like, right? I mean, they give you this sense of clear feedback. They give you a sense of progress. There's the possibility of success, definitely, because, if a game is made, the game is winnable, and you know that. Whereas in real life, there's a lot of things we attempt. Is it possible to succeed? You don't even know. But with games, you know. Games give you mental exercise and physical exercise, and those are pleasurable. They give you a chance to satisfy your curiosity and a way to solve problems, and we love solving problems. And they give you a feeling of freedom, like we talked about. I mean, so there's a lot of things in games that we like. So when people talk about gamifying things, I don't think they really mean make it like games. They generally mean give my thing these qualities. Some of those qualities that games have, how do I get those into my system? Because one of the things that's changing in society, we went from survival economy to industrial economy. We're now moving from industrial economy to a pleasure-based economy. People don't choose a food based on, hey, which one's going to give me the optimal amount of calories and what's going to make me survive through the winter. It's what am I going to like the most? When people talk about work, it used to be, well, what job's going to pay the most? Now we talk about, well, what's going to be the most fulfilling? I don't think in the 1950s career satisfaction was like I don't even know if that was a phrase back then, but now it's something that everybody talks about. We talk about it with school. Does school have to be so terrible? Does it really have to be so painful? Does it have to be such a have-to? Can we make it into something where kids actually want to go and enjoy it? And even shopping, things like cars. Look at the car ads. There's a few of them that are like, yeah, check out our awesome gas mileage. Well, that's kind of about efficiency, but most of them are about, oh man, it feels so great to drive this car, and you'll feel so important when you drive this car, and really cool people drive this car, and you're one of them, right? It's all about other kinds of pleasures that you pick. Okay, that's just a slide, so don't worry about that. Someone designed this. And probably not someone, probably 40 dudes over 8 months arguing around conference tables, should it be stop or should it be halt, and it's a big thing. This was designed, people said, this is the best way that we can provide this information to people. This was a decision that was made. This is the best optimal way to provide information about problems with your computer. That's what error messages used to look like. Now that we're in kind of a more pleasure-based economy, that's what error messages look like, right? How do we take this horrible moment where our customers actually showed up to use your thing and your thing doesn't work at all? How do we make that into something a little pleasurable? Well, they at least give it a shot. And because the thing, pleasure is like really powerful, right? It's avoiding pain and seeking pleasure are everything that drive us as human beings. And our minds know this, so they keep pleasure kind of away from us. They make us do useful things in order to get it. So it's tricky. And it's very complex. Pleasure is not just a simple thing. It's not just pushing a button for somebody, because we adapt to things that are pleasurable, and then soon they're not pleasurable anymore. So if you're serious about, I'm going to make my system more pleasurable, you have to kind of step up to the complexity of that. And part of the complexity is context. People often don't realize how much of pleasure is contextual. People will point to something like, say, the frequent flyer miles. And and they'll say, you know, hey, frequent flyer miles, look, they got points they give you, and they got badges, and they got prizes, and they got levels, and it works great. We'll just take the frequent flyer system and we'll put it on our system, and it'll be great, because their thing has worked for 30 years, and it's amazing and it's great. We just need to do the same thing. But the thing you have to think about is how contextual this is. Most people to whom the frequent flyer program is useful, it's mostly who? It's business travelers, right? So now you think about the mindset of your business traveler, right? The business traveler is very, very status oriented. The reason he's going on this trip is because he's got to go make a sale or give a talk or do something where he's got to feel important. He's psyching himself up about, I can do this. This is a thing where I'm going to feel important. And what do you know? Here's the airline company right here who says, hey, you know what? We see that you fly a lot. That means you're important. You know, if you fly with us a lot, we're gonna reinforce that, how important you are. We're going to call you, you know, you're going to be Mr. Platinum, right? And you're like, yeah, I'm important. I'm Mr. Platinum. And we're going to let you get on the plane first, which is cool. It's slightly convenient, but everyone gets to see you standing there. It makes you feel really important. And better than that, they get to see you get on, and then they get on, and they'll have to walk past you. They could have put first class in the back, right? There's reasons you could have done it, but they put it in the front. So everyone walks past and everyone can see you, and so you get this double sense of feeling important. So the whole thing is about you know, status and feeling important. Now if I took this same system and I said, yeah, this works so great, we're going to use it at Toys R Us, right? And you go to Toys R Us and it's like, hey, come on in. You spent so much money here, you're now a platinum level toy buyer. Good job. You'd be like, what? Oh my God, I have a problem. I need to spend less money at this place. This is terrible, right? Because you know, it's a different context. It's a context where it wouldn't make sense. So then you take the opposite context of the frequent flyer thing, like the grocery store. No one's going around the grocery store like, I'm a platinum level grocery buyer, because no, you're not thinking about how important you are at the grocery store. At the grocery store, you have a totally different mindset. You're trying to buy peanut butter, and there's these 3 peanut butter companies, and they're all trying to trick you and rob you with their stupid little tricks, right? This one, it used to be a 16-ounce jar, now it's a 14-ounce jar, but it stayed the same price, right? This one's $3.59 for 14 ounces, and this one's $3.79 for 17 ounces, and you're sitting there trying to figure out, God, how am I not going to get ripped off by the peanut butter company? Not that you care about saving 3 cents, you just don't want to be a chump, right? So you're sitting there trying to figure out these pennies, and your mind is in this kind of save a penny mindset. So when the grocery store says to you, hey, guess what? If you shop here a lot, you'll save 10 cents on your gasoline. You're like, yes, 10 cents on my gasoline. That's awesome. If you're at the airport and they're like, hey, you fly a lot, you can save 10 cents on gasoline. You'd be like, I don't need that. I'm too important to worry about 10 cents on gasoline. But it works really well for them because they know the context. So to make these things work, you have to understand the context. So we talked about self-determination theory, and you'd think, man, let's just go and get all the psychology stuff. Let's dig it all up. Let's find out what the psychologists know, and then we'll understand this all. Because the psychologists must know this the best, right? That's what they do. They know the human mind, and therefore they must know everything about it. Let's just bring them in here, have them consult on our product, it'll be solved. The problem with this, unfortunately, is the psychologists don't seem to know much about this. Psychologists, their focus tends to be on preventing suffering and predicting behavior. In terms of creating human pleasure, that doesn't seem to be a priority for them. And if you don't believe me, go to their parties. I've been to their parties, and I can draw only one of 2 conclusions. Either they don't understand about human pleasure, or they just don't care about human pleasure. If either of those things is true, they can only be helpful to us to a certain point. So if you're going to try and figure out ways to kind of put pleasure into your products, you've got to go much farther afield and find people who know more about it. Because there's so many kinds of pleasure, right? I mean, here's a bunch of them here, and you can see how different these all are from each other, and they're all pleasurable. And every time I've tried to make lists of all the different kinds of pleasures, there's always more. There's always something more, right? I had a friend who, I was making lists. I'm like, well, what do you think of this list? And she's like, well, it's pretty good, but there's so many things not on here. I'm like, well, what's not on here? She's like, well, like, you know, I love doing craft projects. I'm like, I got that, I got expression. She's like, no, I don't mean that. I mean, like, I'm doing craft projects, and a lot of times you get glue on your fingers, and it dries, and then you got to pick it off. I'm like, yeah, so what? She's like, I really kind of like that when you pick it off. It's really, I love that. I don't know why. I just, sometimes when I'm on the phone, I'll just be bored on the phone. I'll take out the glue. I don't even know I'm doing it. I put the glue on my fingers, I wait for it to dry, and then I start picking it off. I'm like, yeah, okay, pleasure is apparently complex and multi-layered, and there's many, many kinds. And so that's part of what you have to do. You have to look and understand the many different kinds that are there. And so one of the things I say is people say, oh, I want to gamify everything. I'm like, do you? Do you really? I think maybe you don't mean that. I think maybe you really mean you want to pleasurize your experience is really what you're saying. And if you want to get more scientific about it, maybe you'd say you want to improve the motivational design of your experience. You want to change the experience so that people are motivated to do it in new ways and in different ways than they were before. So in short, you can make your experiences better. You can do it. And all you have to do is ask yourself some simple questions. Given what I know about my guests, and I like to say guests. I know some people say users. I know that's the computer science thing to say users. But there's only two industries that say users. The computer science people and the illicit drug trade. They're the only ones. And so I like to step over and say guests because I think it's a little more respectful. So given what I know about my guests, why will they like this experience? And then how can I get them to like it more? If you focus on those two ideas, what do they like? How can I get them to like it more? You can find ways to make it better. And that's all I have. Thank you very much. Do we have time for questions, Matt?
Yes.
All right.
Are there any questions on the VC bridge?
Ooh.
Question on VC?
Go ahead.
Okay, hear me on VC?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So there's a book by Stephen Johnson called Everything Bad is Good for You.
Yeah.
I've seen it, but it's about how we are learning more and more from games nowadays, often without knowing it. And I'd like to hear your opinion on gamifying learning design, and if you picture people see it as a gimmick or an opportunity to learn more while having pleasure, as you said.
I call it a gimmick-tunity. Yeah, no, I have read that book. It's a really great book. I mean, for people who haven't read that book, it's a fascinating argument. What he's looking at is the fact that IQ has been going up steadily for the last 60 years. And why? Is it because our schools are getting awesomer and awesomer? And he argues that no. He argues that it's popular culture. TV shows are getting more and more complicated, and the appearance of games and many other things are making us smarter and smarter. So this is something all the people in the educational space are looking at and trying to figure out. And unfortunately, on some level, there are aspects of it that are gimmicky because a lot of the people focusing on it are like, well, I just want something shiny that's going to help me sell my new digital textbooks. But on another level, people understand that engagement makes for better education. I mean, it's almost obvious that if you're more engaged with what you're trying to learn, you're going to learn it better. And so this now gets into this hard question of if you're really going to do this well and properly, you have to understand what does engage people, what engages them in the right ways that they're going to become engaged with the material. And part of the reason this thing is so hard is because typically, it sounds weird to say this, but most educators don't really know what they're trying to do. If you ask them, specific questions about, well, what is it? How do you want students to be different at the end of this? A lot of them just retreat to, well, I want them to know the material in this book, but that's not really what these things are about. Algebra is not about knowing the specifics of algebra. Algebra is about learning to think in a fundamentally new way. Anyway, the key thing when it comes down to creating meaningful educational software and trying to figure out how do you sort of add pleasure to education is you have to look at what is it that I'm trying to get across and what are the problems with it? What are the walls that people are having? Because if you have something that's easy to learn and everybody can do it anyway, you don't need to change it. But if you have things where people are hitting walls and they are bored with it and it is painful to do, those are the things you want to fix. And it's very complicated because you got to avoid all that stuff about if you give rewards the wrong way, people are going to get less out of it. What I find it's all about tricks in a sense to get people to think about it and then to be more engaged. In other words, when you're doing it right, you're inspiring the curiosity of the students. Curiosity ends up, I think, being central to most of the improved education.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. I'm going to set the microphone so he wins. Okay.
There we go. I want to latch on to your peanut butter example because it seems to be a little bit inconsistent with your concluding slide, even though it's consistent with your overall message. When you're shopping for peanut butter and you're trying not to get robbed,
Yeah.
there's nothing pleasurable about that you can latch onto and say.
Nothing?
No, you're avoiding the negative consequence, right, in the way that you.
Well, I guess the one thing I'd argue about it, the thing I'd argue for is that yeah, I'm avoiding the negative consequence of getting screwed, but when I beat those jerks, yes, I figured you jerks out and I won. I won the battle against the peanut butter. So there is a little bit of a chance of something there, but yeah, mostly it's not good. But I'm sorry, where were you going with this?
Well, where I was going with that was that it seemed that the conclusion was a bit more general than find what your guest finds pleasurable and try to enhance that. It's more like find what your guest is trying to accomplish and get your guest to do related things. So if pleasure is part of that, that's great, but if it's some challenge that needs to be overcome and you're just going to grit your teeth and do it and be proud of yourself, well, one way to phrase it is, well, you're going to be pleasurable and you overcame the challenge. But maybe another way to phrase it is, well, you're trying really hard to accomplish this thing, and if I can give you a little forward push by it and do this other thing, and enjoy that moment too, right? So I wonder if pleasure is really the central idea here, much like people assume that fun was the central idea.
I think I continue to find that I think pleasure really is sort of central to it. I mean, just in the example of the grocery store, I mean, we know there's a lot of things that are not pleasurable about grocery shopping, and to the extent you can kind of take the bad things away, you certainly want to do that. But then a lot of it comes from sort of looking at the context of grocery shopping and what's in people's minds, and what can you do to sort of add to it. Now, there's parts of it that get a little dark, particularly in the retail space. People are often shopping when they're hungry, for example, and there's lots of ways you can trick them. And the reason we have so many impulse buys right near the edge is because you're susceptible to those in a way you weren't before. It's more pleasurable at that moment to kind of indulge in those than it was at the beginning. And sometimes that's selling you junk you don't need. But still, like from the point of view of the grocery store's mission, that's where a lot of their focus ends up being. Sure. Yeah, Daniel. I think it will help the grand transcription. Google will have more data if you speak into that microphone, in other words.
Right. So the question is, how do you avoid, when you're trying to get more pleasurable things into the products or whatever, how do you avoid this kind of treadmill feeling? Like, say, buy a game, it has like 10 achievements, you achieve them all, you feel really great about yourself. The next 10 you will have 100, and the next one has 1,000 achievements. And then, but then you begin to count it, like millions of them over them, and none of them, there's kind of an inflation thing.
Yeah.
And a treadmill that you need to continue to get more and more every time. So you get to a point that you don't really care about any of these techniques anymore.
Right.
How do you avoid and create a context where the user where you stay ahead of this inflation? Yeah,
well, I don't know if it's a thing you can always stay ahead of. So it's partly, we talked about the business of our brains are good at adapting to reward systems, right? Because one of the things we know is variable rewards are always better than fixed rewards. That's like an old psychology thing. And the concrete example would be, let's say you bring bagels to work right? You say, I'm going to start bringing bagels to work. And every Friday you bring bagels to work. The first Friday, everybody's like, whoa, bagels, this is awesome. And then the next Friday, hey, cool bagels. And then the Friday after that, hey, there's the bagels, I like that. And then like by the 6th Friday, like everyone's just like, oh yeah, there's the bagels. And then the 7th Friday you forget and you don't bring the bagels. And then people are like, oh, where's the bagels? Oh, you jerk, there's no bagels, right? So it's turned into a punishment. This thing was supposed to be a reward. If instead of doing them on a regular basis, where everyone acclimatizes to it, you bring them the same amount of times, say 4 times a month, but at random times, then every time it's like, oh, bagels, I didn't expect that. And it's always a pleasant surprise. So when you talk about these sort of badge systems, it's exciting like the first time you get the 10 badges and level up and you're like, yeah, I achieved it. Well, if I give you another 10 and it's the same difficulty, you're like, I know I can do that. I mean, it's not exciting. It's because the question, again, gets back to curiosity. That when someone gives you a challenge, the challenge is interesting when you're not sure if you can solve it. If you know you can solve it, it's boring. But if you're like, can I do this? I don't know. And then you do it. Yes, I can do it. If I give it to you again, I know I can do that. Sure, I'll do it, but it doesn't matter. And so what they do is like, oh, you did 10? Well, can you do 20? And then, well, maybe I can. But then soon it gets so onerous. It's like, can you do 1,000,000? I could, but God, it would take forever. I get so sick of it just trying to get there. And then you walk away from the whole thing because they're trying to find ways to modify it. So the key is to find ways to modify things that give surprises without having them, grow in suffering and pain. And that's a difficult thing to do. But in short, systems like that can burn themselves out. I mean, there's no 2 ways about it. The question, I think, is what do you give the rewards for? If you give someone new challenges and new things to do and use the same reward structure, then that works fine.
We have time for one more? Sure. Okay. So this is a bit of a selfish question. I have 4 children of sort of elementary ages.
I don't do babysitting, so, oh, okay.
We can make a game out of it. Can you help me understand a little bit of what the state of edutainment, if that's an appropriate term, software is? My anecdotal evidence is that it's really pretty easy these days to make games and probably really hard to make good games. So when they go looking for things that sort of are subject matter appropriate for what I want, I find lots and lots of crap.
Sure.
So is that, I'm not looking in the right places, is edutainment something that...
How old are your kids?
Everywhere from preschool 3 to 10.
There's a ton of great stuff for ages like 3 through 6. And most of it is living on the iPad, is where most of it's living right now. There's a ton of excellent stuff there. Now, unfortunately, Apple doesn't seem to much care about review systems. Right. And so there's very difficult to find a quality filter. But there's definitely for the younger kids, there really is some just world-class stuff. The problem after you get past age 6 is the market is kind of screwed up, because before age 6, or before age 7 really, before the age of wisdom, before the age when children really learn the devil's word, no. If you go to a 5-year-old and you say, hey, you should check out this game, they'll be like, oh, sure, okay, I'll play this game, whatever. You go to an 8-year-old and say, hey, check out this game, and they're like, nope, not interested in that. That's not what the kids at school are playing. Nope, I got this other thing I want. Let's do this thing. And so what happens is the parents can kind of inflict all kinds of educational software on their kids before that, but after that, particularly once the kids are in school, they're like, man, I've been in school all day. You're going to hit me with more school? You get out of here with that. They want to do things that are just, sort of far away from that. So that's part of the challenge. The best quality stuff I've been seeing, even to some extent creeping up a little older, is on the iPad, because they can just, the market economics sort of support that. You just got to find it. That's the hard part.
How do you find it?
You poke around on forums, ask other people. I can send you a list of some that I think are great. Anything that DuckDuckMoose or Nosy Crow makes is totally top notch. And there's a thing that Children's Technology Review. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Children's Technology Review is a great reviews of software for kids, and partly entertainment, partly educational. That thing is a real great guideline for what's good for kids.
Great, thanks.
Anything else?
think we'll wrap it up. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you for having me.